Sending the signal over to mighty fine guitars and doing some dee-dee-dee scat singing, and when I do it, it gives new meaning to the term scat singing, dee-dee-dee-dee. Here, I'm going to share this. Is what I'm going to do. Dee 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 dee. There we are. Dee 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 dee. Sharing to another page, and I didn't want to do that. You can watch that while I send this over to Mighty Fine Guitars. Folks, I'll be right with you. Starting a little late today because, as several people pointed out to me, something that I had not realized, this COVID-19 report goes on at noon here in California, and best not to bump into that. So move things to 12:30. There you are. And sending this signal over to the Mighty Fine Guitars page, which shouldn't be this difficult or lengthy, but apparently it is. Momentito. Write something on the page, about 3 screens down. Paste that there, and I think we're okay on both pages. Alrighty. Phew. Nice to see ya. Stevie Coyle here, doing what had been a regular feature here at Mighty Fine Guitars in Lafayette, California. Thank you very much. Part of the La Marinda Tri-Cities area. And this Friday Noontime Webcast had been a thing for quite some time, and then this whole World War C, as Jorma Kaukonen calls it, came along and changed a lot. So I'm doing these every couple of weeks just to minimize outside exposure. Apparently, I'm almost a senior citizen, which kind of freaks me out, because that's only on the outside. You know what I'm talking about. I turned 64 a couple of weeks ago, thank you very much, and it astonishes me too. So I'm trying to minimize outdoor exposure and all that stuff, because this little microbe apparently does not like us oldsters. And us oldsters, I've never said those 2 words in that order before. Miss Valerie is not with me today. She's taking care of things back at the Casa, and that's fine, but things are going to be a little different here because I'll have to look for your comments and questions myself online. I thought today we might focus on Goodall guitars because one is going out of the shop. One has been purchased, and it's a fabulous thing. I'm going to miss it terribly. It's a Brazilian rosewood cutaway GC Grand Concert from Goodall from 2005. Fabulous thing. I'm kind of surprised, frankly. It's hung around in the shop as long as it has. Excuse me. Let's see here if there are any comments or questions already. Please do, if you wouldn't mind, just because I get such a kick out of it. It's like getting postcards years and years ago. I got a big kick out of finding out where you're webbing in from. So if you wouldn't mind, just tap, 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 and let me know where you're webbing in from, and that'll be big jollies for me. And you know what? I think maybe, looking at this picture... No, that's all right, isn't it? Shall I move in a little closer? I've got a wide-angle lens on the thing. Let me know what you think about that, too. Let's see. Mark is on. Hey, Mark. Do say hello. 10 comments, and I'll get to them here presently. That way, I guess, is the way to do it. Mark is on. Hey, Mark. And let me turn down volume, which is necessary. Hey, John Western. Hey, John Western. Nice to see you. The Shakespeare Festival, tell me all about it. Are you doing any kind of online Shakespeare Festival now? That would be interesting. Dale Barcelos, John DeLapp, stick around. We're featuring one of your guitars today. Fabulous builder up in the Davis, Sacramento winters vortex that for some reason there are lots of really cool builders building up there. Something on the water is my guess. So John DeLapp will be featuring one of your guitars here in just a little bit. Linda Patterson from Newark, thank you very much. Arden, howdy, nice to see you. Great. Ralph It sounds good? Okay, good. Let me know about the levels. I'm always concerned about that. This microphone is really sensitive, and that can be good and it can be bad. So if I start overdriving the mic at all, let me know, because we have methods to ameliorate that. Very good. And you know what you can do? John Kresich, anybody out there, if you want, you can share this. If you're on a non-laptop device like a tablet or a smartphone, tip it vertically, and then you can, just like on Tinder, or so I'm told, you can swipe to the left to get to comments and questions to see what's going on. So if you're on a smartphone, even though the picture is going to be probably better, it only gets so good, it's going to be better sideways, landscape, as the young people say. Probably profile, or portrait rather, is the way to go, because then you can see all these comments and muttered threats, as I like to say, coming in. So it'll, like I said, Lee Kopp. Hey there, Lee. How are you? Slade, Eric, excellent. I feel like Miss Nancy, and I see X, Y, and Z. Well, today, like I said, we're going to start off with a Goodall guitar that is headed out. It's making its way out of the shop, and it's a Brazilian-backed guitar. So I thought I'd play one other Goodall that just came into the shop before World War C hit, and a John DeLapp guitar that's also Brazilian and is really quite moderately fabulous and modestly priced. See how I mix those two words up like that? That's happening more and more. From San Jose, yes indeed. Yes, Jam Kazam. We're all, so many musicians are looking at Jam Kazam. And Luke Hess has been of enormous help on, and Tony Becker on Facebook. Perhaps you've heard of it. They've been enormously helpful in getting details out to those of us that are interested in working with Jam Kazam. I think at the moment, the limiting factor for me is my plan with Comcast Xfinity for bouncing stuff up. My upload speeds are very slow, and that's what I need to upgrade. So I'll look into that for rehearsal and jamming and performing. I think somehow you can record your performances online. And I'd love to do that with my partner Glenn Houston in the Quitters, and with Marco and the Polos, one of the many Hellman family subsidiaries. And that'd be great. That would be 8 people, 7 or 8 people sharing the stream. So I'm not sure how that'd work. But Lee, you're welcome. Anything I find out about Jam Kazam will probably end up on that thread, a couple of notices down, a couple of posts down on my Facebook page. So you're in the right place. Hey, Ken. Hey, Tom. John Mooney. Excellent. Yes, indeed. Vancouver, Washington. Hi there, Tom. Well, all right. Tell me, I've got a wide-angle lens on today. I'm trying that out too. Are things too far away for you to see properly? Because I can tuck in. Let me know if I should pull the camera in a little bit. Like I say, Miss Valerie is not here to help me out today, so I'm strictly on my own. Wish me luck. All right. David Evans Sock, nice to see you. Great. Bristol, Rhode Island, of course. Bill Quinlan, excellent, from the great Midwest. All right. Yeah, the stuff. Yeah, Arden, I know. Jam Kazam. Boy, you know, from what I understand, it's kind of a perpetual beta offering. And why the hell isn't somebody, with all the demand for that, why isn't that being funded? At the moment, it's essentially unfunded, which seems crazy to me. But that's the word I hear on the wire, so who knows? All right, well, like I say, I was going to start off with this lovely, it's got a lot of letters and numbers to it, and you could not pronounce it. I think if you were going to try and pronounce it, it would be a Berkejik. This is a good old Berkejik, a Brazilian rosewood JC from 2005, and it's quite wonderful. Adirondack top, Brazilian back and sides, and I'm afraid it's spoken for. It went out the door yesterday. How about that? Wow. Like I said, I'm going to miss this one. Tons of ring. Well, you can put 'em in the ground, 6 feet down, till you hear that coffin sound. You can weep and you can moan, that old boy is never coming home. Another man done a full go round, another man done a full go round. Brazilian rosewood does this thing that you're hearing. Normally, on most guitars, to delineate between the bass notes, which I'm trying to make sound like a big stand-up bass player that go thump, 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 I would attenuate the high end by palm, what they call it palm muting. It's not really the palm of your hand, it's the heel of your hand. I'd mute those low strings with the heel of my right hand. Take this damn watch off, what the hell? And I would normally do that, but this guitar rings so much and the overtones stack up so nicely, which is certainly part and parcel of the sound of Brazilian rosewood. And an Adirondack top, so it's got lots of snap to it. Adirondack is a very stiff spruce, and you can make it really thin so it's really resonant, gets the top activated like crazy with just a touch. Really loud guitar. But fear not, we got one coming up, another Brazilian rosewood coming up in just a little bit that is neck and neck. And that one is for sale. Well, let me catch up with comments here. Thank you for tuning in, by the way. I'm Stevie Coyle. You're watching the Friday Noontime 30, I gotta rename it, Webcast from Mighty Fine Guitars in Lafayette, California. Thank you very much. Hi, Jen. Hey, Craig. Marty Higgins, George Gibbs, Seattle, thank you very much. Doesn't it sound great, Gordon? It's a great guitar. And I can tell you, these strings are not fresh. None of the strings in here are particularly fresh, because there'd be kind of no point in putting them on and just letting them stew, and nobody playing them. But here's the thing, kids. If you're interested in any of the guitars on the shop, and more going up on the website every day, I finally, whipped the people down in the basement, in the production department, into shape, and more stuff is going up on the website every day. If you're interested in a guitar and you're close by here, we can arrange a handoff for a sleepover. Something I used to do before the COVID-19 nightmare. Anyway, we just have to be a little extra careful, and there are ways to do that, and I can explain that to you if you're interested in taking any of these guitars overnight for a sleepover. We can work it out. Leave me a credit card. If I know you, we can just kind of do a handoff in the parking lot. If you're far away, like Seattle, Rhode Island, wherever, out in the Midwest, BQ, if you wanted to take a guitar for a while just to see if it's true love, if you're pretty sure it's your style of guitar, it's got the woods you like, it's the size you like, it's maybe a brand name you like, Lordy, just let me know, because I can ship you the guitar, give you a few days to let it stew in your garage, to let all the microbes fall off and die away, and then you'd get a couple of days after that to decide if it's true love. If it is, you keep the guitar. If it isn't, no harm, no foul. You send it back and just pay shipping both ways. There are ways to make this work. So that's what's happening with this guitar. It's going off to the deep south because the fella just fell in love with the woods. He says, I've been looking for one of these. So, and even with strings that are at least 6 weeks old, and certainly longer, because I didn't change these right before I left. Lordy. Well, like I said, that one's spoken for. Gorgeous Adirondack. I can't see my angles too well here. But Adirondack top, Brazilian back and sides, Goodall. I've never played a Goodall that wasn't at least moderately fabulous. Some are more fabulous than others, of course, but man, they're all top-notch guitars. I'm sure he's made some less than stellar guitars in his time. I've never played one, and I've played a lot of Goodalls over the many decades since I'm now nearly a senior citizen. Whew, crikey. Here's another Goodall. This one came into the shop just before we closed up, and it's a big boy. Man, this is one big-ass guitar, a BAG. That string is too big. This is a jumbo. This is a rosewood jumbo. It's not Brazilian, but it's beautiful East Indian rosewood. with a Sitka top, and it's quite wonderful. It's a Goodall. They're great. From a distance, you can sometimes tell Goodalls by this fairly distinctive bridge shape. Most of them are kind of like that. Not all, but most. Again, Rosewood gives you all of those overtones that stack up on each other and blend together, and the peaks and valleys line up and amplify the sound essentially, and the reverberation. Lots of notes get extra sustain because of the way I'm doing this as if you know what the hell I'm talking about. The way that the wavelengths stack up on each other. There's extra sustain. That's one of the I was going to say artifacts, but that's kind of a pejorative term. That's one of the characteristics of rosewood back and sides, as opposed to mahogany, which tends to give you, and those are the two main back and side woods. Mahogany tends to give you kind of a shorter duration, more punch perhaps, shorter duration, and not quite as complex in the overtone stack. La-di-da. Big bass, big tuba bass on this one. Wow. I don't know if the microphone picked that up. As I was tuning down to the note, which you should never do, always tune up to a note. And I'll go back and do that. But as I was tuning down to the note, you could hear the note decline, decline, decline. Then all of a sudden it got really loud because those overtones lined up on each other and stacked up and gave you more volume. Chance, I wonder if this will even play, but let me give it a try. Okay, now I'm kind of between D and E, sorry. And as I tune down, see if you hear where it comes into tune and suddenly blooms. No, it won't do it. It's like taking your car to the mechanic. It won't do it when you get to the shop. Oh, yeah. Now I'll do it the proper way. You know what? In tuning, we all cheat, and we shouldn't. We all cheat and think, well, if I just tune down, I'll be okay. But the physics are against you there if you tune down to a note that you're going for instead of tuning up. If you tune up, you've stretched that string as far as it's going to stretch. It's not going to tighten anymore. But if you tune down to a string, you're loosening the string, and it could loosen some more after you let go of the tuner. So there. You can't argue with physics, as the Scotsman said. Kind of throaty, sort of, it's not got a lot of head voice like some guitars, but it's got this big throaty kind of baritone bass sort of sound to it. A real chest voice for you vocalists out there. Big, just real big. It's a big guitar too. So if you have any sort of shoulder impingements or anything like that, this is perhaps not the guitar for you unless you play like this. Totally workable. You get to hear the guitar more this way, you know, if you kind of really lean it back. Or if you play standing up. But otherwise, a BAG, you bet. And let me take a moment here and see what's happening on the wire. Catch up with your comments and questions, and fashion suggestions, which are always welcome. Let's see here. Boy, am I behind. Hi, Peter. Do I sell strings? No, I don't sell strings. Right next door at La Marinda Music, they sell strings, and there's kind of no point. Sell them for the same price. You can get them either place. Send them over there. They have a much better selection than I ever had. I'll tell you that. Ken Bonfield, fabulous guitarist. Hello, Ken. Where are you dialing in from? Remind me where you are. You're in the middle of the country there somewhere, as I recall. Hey, from Florida. Hey, Paul. Very good. You know what? The Franklin. I wasn't going to play it, but I will. I'll play the Franklin after I play the DeLap. Good idea, Matt. Nick Toth. Hey, how are you, man? Good to see you. Alan Mons. Jeepers, Crow. This is all the usual suspects here. It could be quite a roundup. Jim, Ralph, Gordon, Charlie. Wonderful. Well, all right, let me press on then if there's no pressing questions or anything, if I'm just blathering in a useful way. Let me show you this guitar, which is by a gentleman, like I say, in the Davis-Sacramento Winters Vortex. His name is John DeLap. Wonderful builder. Wow. See how I was a good boy there and I tuned up to that D note there instead of down to it? It just never pays off. It never pays off to cheat that way. Cheaters never prosper, just like Sister Godzilla Marie used to tell us. Brazilian has that sound. There's something about it. I wish there wasn't, because Brazilian is rare and restricted in certain ways. But boy, there is something about the sound of a Brazilian guitar. There just is. Not all Brazilian guitars, but the ones that do their thing. You know, there's mojo goes into guitar building, and who knows what it is. Guitar can be built from the same slabs of wood. One of my guitars, the Precious, was built from the same slabs of wood as another guitar built in exactly the same style. They do not sound the same at all. Really different sounding guitars. There's mojo goes into it. And that's what I always say for people coming into the shop, kind of looking to buy. They'll say, I don't know, there's so many great guitars, I don't know what to buy. And I always say, just play a bunch of guitars that appeal to you for whatever reason, whether or not you can articulate it. And choose the one that just kind of jumps up and bites you on the butt for reasons that you can't articulate. Because what you're looking for in a really fine guitar, in a mighty fine guitar, thank you very much, is mojo, is X factor, is that part of buying considerations that you can't articulate. You can articulate a lot about what you're looking for in a guitar. I want this size. I like an OM. This is an OM. I like Brazilian rosewood and Sitka. Great. Whatever it is, you like what you like. But does the guitar, is it just plain fun to play? Does it talk to you in ways that you can't articulate? That's the stuff you're looking for in a really fine buy. And if you go with that, you can't go wrong, you know? If it's really fun to play, chances are it's easy in the left hand, or whatever you're looking for. It's stiff because you're a bluegrasser and you want something that fights back a little bit, gives you tons of volume. Whatever your considerations are, the fun factor is the main thing. Boy, did I ever, and I should have taken my own advice years ago. Out there somewhere, touring with Menudo, you know, out there in the Midwest somewhere, as I recall, there was a little guitar shop we went into, because we went into every guitar shop we could, of course, you know, and all of us, just because it was a thing to do on the road, aside from eating at laminated menu restaurants and driving to the next motel. Ah, the life of a touring musician, where the glamour just never begins. But going into guitar shops, there was one, I think it was in Kansas somewhere, and it wasn't a fancy guitar shop, it wasn't one of the well-known ones. And there was a Harmony guitar in there from the 60s. And it was $175, and Mr. Smarty Pants talked himself out of buying that guitar. I said, no, I'm way too good a guitarist to buy a $175 guitar. Holy smokes, what a dumb shit. And I think about that guitar all the time. It didn't sound great. It sounded kind of, it had this kind of flat sort of sound to it. It was real woody and flat, didn't have a lot of sustain, you know, but it had mojo to spare. and it talked to me, and I talked to it, and I left it behind, and I think about that guitar all the time. So I will take my own medicine next time and buy guitars that have extra mojo, that speak to me beyond, from beyond. Wowee, Brazilian, man. John DeLapp builds a fine guitar. I've got several in here. This is the most expensive by far. We're asking $62.50, but I'll bet there's some flex in that. You know, if you're interested, we could talk. There's always a little bit of horse trading available. He's got 3 other guitars in here that are all $2,900 that are fantastic. We'll feature him and Peter Rodman next week. Another guy from the Vortex, the Sacramento Winters Davis, California Vortex. We'll feature those guys again next week. I'll play all those guitars. That's a good theme right there. It was down in old Joe's barroom, in a corner by the square. The usual crowd was assembled, and Big Joe McHenry was there. Let her go, God rest her, wherever she may be. Search this wild world over, and she'll never find another sweet man like me. I should learn that song. That's a really good song. John DeLapp, D-E, capital D, small e, capital L, small a, small p, John DeLapp. Wonderful. Oh, and Matt Hayden had asked for, hey Matt, you had asked for a quick hit off of the Franklin, and let me see if I can get over there without knocking shit over. Always a challenge, especially in the half dark. The brand name is Franklin. I'll be back, don't worry. I'm fine. Don't call the cops or anything. Nick Kukic is the fellow that builds these guitars, but he calls them Franklin because it was either the street he grew up on or the town he was from. And he thought that was Franklin was perhaps a better and more memorable name than Kukic, K-U-K-I-C-H, which I'm sure he got teased mercilessly about for a little kid. This is a very interesting guitar, Brazilian again. Indeed, Brazilian, and some of the fine... this is never going to show up on camera, I'm afraid. But some of the finest Brazilian I've ever seen. Absolutely straight grain, absolutely quarter sawn, astonishing Brazilian. The top is... I've forgotten what the top is. European, perhaps? I think it probably says in here somewhere. This guitar was built many years ago, and then had a little extra work done to it. They scalloped the braces and shaved the neck down. So the neck profile is really flat. It's really wide. It's 1 and almost 7/8 across the fingerboard at the nut. But it's really shallow depth-wise, this way. So it's a real interesting feel. The width is almost classical. refined sort of sound. Really just kind of elegant, as Brazilian can do. All of these Brazilians have a certain elegance to them. So it was built back in the 80s. Nick Kukic was one of the first guys to kind of resuscitate the OM guitar, which had essentially died out by that time. He started building OMs, and this is an OM with a cutaway, which is very unusual sort of cutaway. Not exactly Florentine, not exactly Venetian, more one than the other, but with this deep cut on the side, real different. It doesn't swoop up to the body the way so many other cutaways do. Back in the 80s, he started building OM guitars, and he started the wave that was picked up very shortly after that, I think, independently, I believe, by Eric Schoenberg and Dana Bourgeois, who went to Martin and said, hey, you know what? You're kind of blowing it. The best guitar you ever made was the OM, and we're going to prove it to you. We'll build some and see what you think. And that kind of started this whole trend of builders building OM guitars. It's real interesting to come back and play these guitars after 6 weeks, or is it 7? They all run together. Every day's Blur's Day, although some days are Wednesday. As I play, I find I have to be a little more careful about muting, because if I just let everything ring together, suddenly it's this big washy thing, which is great. It's really cool to have that option to let everything wash together if you want, and to stop notes. You know, in just the teeniest, tiniest guitar lesson, if it may be so presumptuous. A lot of what sounds good to us, I think, when we hear a guitarist and we say, that person's good, is intentionality. You get the impression that you're hearing what they're intending. And part of intentionality is when you stop notes, not just when you start them. It's not just when the envelope starts. It's when you shut off that sound envelope for a given string or a given note or a given chord. That bespeaks intentionality as well. And in that little piece, I found myself having to kind of mute all over the place, because otherwise everything would just run together. But it's great to have, it's kind of like, the analogy I always use is sort of like having a thoroughbred. It's all there, you know, wants to go just all the time. But you can pull back on the reins a little bit and get more control over this wild beast on your lap, and to mix strange visual metaphors. Let's press on, shall we? That was a strange interlude that I hope will not be repeated. So, filters restored. If you can be more intentional about where you're stopping notes, that's great. And if you have a guitar that will give you tons of sustain, you can make more of those choices. I think that's where I was going with that twisted analogy. Matt, I'm going to check in and see if you had any questions about that in particular, or anybody at all. Yes, Mary. Way too many fine guitars. It's the curse I live with. Mary Jean Oliva. Hi, Mary Jean. Nice to see you. One of my old Santa Clara. Go Broncos. There we are. Greg, Irish Greg is watching. Hi, Irish Greg. Nice to see you. Runs one of the old K-Fog DJs and runs a Zoom cast that I stopped in on the other day. Tons of fun. Great time. Lovely stuff. Mojo, Ken. Indeed. Hey, Mokai. Brian Colner. There's some great finger pickers on here. Terrific. Still working here? Purdy. Very good. Yes, Tom Scharf. That old guitar, that old harmony, did have mojo. It had that kind of, that sort of David Rawlings sort of sound. It did. Kind of pingy and flat. Some banjo characteristics to it. It was hip. And of course, by the time and this was years and years ago, by the time I realized I should have bought it, I'd forgotten where I was. Because that happened too. Talk about Blur's day. All those days on the road tended to just... Sure, Matt, there you go. Peter Dave, nice to see you. Andre Marty Higgins, Teacher David. Hi, Teacher David. Nice to see you and Marty. Very good. Oh, Gordon asks, Stevie, I know you offer online guitar lessons. I have a friend with a fabulous uke he would like to learn how to play. Do I teach uke lessons? I can teach uke to a certain point. Because, kids, much as it seems like a completely different instrument, those of you who know this already, and those who don't will find out presently that ukulele is tuned, the intervals are just the same as the top four strings of the guitar. The strings are tuned to different places, but those shapes are all consistent. So if you do one of these kind of D-ish shapes, you get a nice sounding chord. What the chord is depends on what kind of uke you have, what size uke you have, and how you've tuned it. But the standard way to play uke is, it's just sort of like the top four strings of the guitar, except this note is up an octave. So it's da, 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 da. Yeah, that exactly. I don't want to curse you with an earworm for the day or the week. What's that song? Oh, Jen. the little song I was playing, it's Junk by Paul McCartney. Your pal and teacher, Lawrence Juber, no doubt has a fabulous version of that, I would guess. That's Junk. Or maybe instrumental Junk. There were a couple of versions of Junk on the Cherries album that McCartney did back in then. Mike Tatarakis, excellent. Danny O'Keefe, man, oh man, all the stars are here. Rick Kitamata, there's a lot of alliteration and onomatopoeia going on here. Custard Pie, now we're talking. Custard Pie is watching. I got to get a screenshot of that. Hang on a sec. There we go. Very good. And Daniel Nesselrode. Well, very good. I think I'm going to wind things up here. I've been nattering on for several minutes, as I recall. And thank you for tuning in. Please feel free to continue the discussion here. If you had any questions that you didn't get to or didn't want to tune away from, we're too busy to type them in now, feel free to type them in later on this thread or the Mighty Fine Guitars thread. Presumably, this is going up to both walls at the same time, both the Stevie Coyle wall and the Mighty Fine Guitars wall. And once again, my name's Stevie Coyle. I'm webcasting from Mighty Fine Guitars, tucked away in a little corner in bucolic Lafayette, California, sort of due east of San Francisco, not too many miles, but through the hills and over a bridge, so it seems farther away. And of course, nowadays, everything is far away from everything else. So we played today a guitar that's going out, the good old Bergajic, the Brazilian Rosewood JC, and we played a good old jumbo in East Indian Rosewood. We played a John DeLapp Brazilian OM, fantastic, and the Franklin OM, built in the 80s and kind of had a bit of a redo, had the braces shaved and the neck shaped much later on. So I'll play a little bit and I'll say goodbye, and I'll crawl over there in the most awkward way possible and shut off the camera. Thanks for tuning in, and be safe out there. I'm not sure I could be much more safe. I've only been in 2 places for 7 weeks, here and home. No, that's a lie, Coyle. I went to the bird store one day. It was my birthday. It was a special treat. Valerie took me on an excursion up to the bird store in Pleasant Hill, which must be, 7 miles away. Big excursion, and we drove there and back. Tempting fate. Not at all. that, I just got to try a little alternate tuning here. I got a tune for the last 2 bars. Good for me. Well, thanks again, ladies and gentlemen. Stevie Coyle here, signing out from Mighty Fine Guitars. I'm not sure if I'm going to do these every week. Certainly every 2 weeks. I'll be doing the Friday Noontime 30 webcast. And thanks for tuning in. Stay safe. Love to all. And if you get a chance... Oh, and somebody mentioned very kindly, yes, I do give guitar lessons, as well as the occasional ukulele lesson. Hit me up for guitar lessons. This is a great time to catch up on some of those unfulfilled New Year's resolutions from like 1986. So this is a good time to do that. Zoom is terrific for teaching. I must say I hadn't even heard of it 5 weeks ago, and now my ass is welded to a chair and I'm in front of Zoom for hours a day. It's terrific, and it works really well. So if you've always wanted to do guitar lessons, I do half hours for $45, hours for $85, PayPal, Venmo, easy as pie. I also do a webcast on Friday nights, like tonight, on stageit.com. Stageit.com. Cost you $3.50 to get in, $3.50, and it's like a 35, 40-minute show typically. And on Monday nights, I do a show on Facebook. Perhaps you've heard of it. At 7:30. Tonight's show will be at 6:05 on stageit.com. Just plug in my name in the search bar. And on Monday nights, you can find me right here on Facebook at 7:30 on Monday nights. I think that's all of the self-aggrandizement I can manage. I can stand myself for the day. So now you're all caught up, and I'll see you down the road. Ta-ta, everybody.